Hey, everybody. Welcome into the podcast. We are back with another special bonus episode.
Bonus episode.
Brad, it is that time of year again for fat babies shooting arrows, hearts everywhere,
Bob,
chocolates, flowers.
love is in the air.
Yes, it is, my friend. It is almost Valentine's Day. And you know what that means. We are making some romantic cocktails on the Film and Whiskey podcast today.
Oh, I thought it meant that people were just complaining about how it's a Hallmark holiday and nobody actually cares and love is dead. And that's usually what I see on social media. So
I was going to say, I don't know what goes on in your household, but elsewhere, people actually enjoy this holiday. And so we've enlisted some help because, you know, Brad and I can mix up a decent cocktail here and there. We know the classics. But we don't get super creative yet. I don't know. I don't trust myself to branch out a lot yet, Brad. And so we have enlisted the help of Fitz Bailey, who is the global brand ambassador for Cooper's Craft. I've been following Fitz on Instagram for a couple years now. He's just a fantastic content producer, first of all. But the drinks that he is consistently thinking up and making up and displaying on social media, I've always wanted to try them. And we're finally going to get the chance today. Fitz, how are you today?
Bob, I have to say that is absolutely the best intro I've ever received. I thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
I am doing spectacular. I hope you all are doing the same.
We are now, because I have tried one of these 3 cocktails that you've given us, and I think Brad has tried a different one. So we've hit 2 of the 3. The third one is very, very decadent. It is a definite dessert cocktail. I've just finished dinner, so I'm ready for that one too. We're going to dive into the cocktails here in just a minute, but before we get there, Fitz, I'd love for you to just give us a little bit of background. We've had a few brand ambassadors on the show before, and one of the things I really love about talking to brand ambassadors is the backgrounds you all come from are just so vastly different. You know, not a lot of you came up through the ranks in the spirits industry. A lot of people, we just had one on the show a few months ago that was in a band for a long time. And so kind of learned the world of PR through doing music. So I'd love to hear your background, your history, how you got into Cooper's Craft and to where you are today.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you are absolutely correct, though. Every brand ambassador has a different story. When I was in college, I did a little bartending, but this is back during the vodka wars. My palate was definitely not what it is now. I was ordering top shelf cake vodka. I thought I was the coolest person on the planet. And the drinks I were making were vodka crayons, maybe a dash of pineapple, nothing big. But when I got out of college, I started working on, there's this thing called the Jack Daniel's Experience. And it's this 55-foot trailer that just travels around the U.S. and they bring a mobile distillery to these music festivals, motorcycle rallies, and NASCAR races. And I basically would be on this truck and I would tell people the story of Jack.
Oh, cool.
And it was a really great experience. I got to meet so many different folks from all walks of life. And from that, I ended up working with Zach Brown, and I was on tour with them for 2 years.
Wow.
With Jack Daniels. They had for several years something called the Jack and Zach, and they would do a eat and greet. And you would basically buy these special tickets, and before the show, you and I think 100, 150 other folks would eat a home-cooked meal with Zach and the brand, and we managed to put Jack Daniels in all the food you got to enjoy. So I was basically a road dog for 2 years. It was really, really fun. But I wanted to do a little bit more. So I ended up moving to Dallas to put on Jack events, whiskey festivals, all that good stuff. And then Cooper's had this opening. And when I found myself in Louisville, I work in 26 states all across the US talking with nice folks about bourbon and education.
Man, that is so cool. And the connection here, for those who may not know, between Jack Daniel's and Cooper's Craft is that they're both brands in the portfolio of Brown-Forman. And we get along quite well with Brown-Forman on this podcast. We've had Jackie Zykan from Old Forester on here a number of times. We've had the Master Distillers of Woodford on here a number of times. And I got to say, man, every time you guys supply us with some product too, it's like I get giddy. It's like a kid on Christmas. And I think that, if I'm being honest, if there is a slept on brand in the portfolio, it's Cooper's Craft. Like it's widely available. I always see it at the liquor store. It's so affordably priced.
And Bob, it's freaking amazing.
It's so good.
Such a just phenomenal whiskey.
And here's the thing, when we were like pricing out whiskeys in the early seasons, when we were just like self-funding everything, we couldn't afford much. I was like, Cooper's Craft, that's right up our alley. And we tried like the baseline offering and the 100 proof. And I have to say, if you're thinking of value in the world of bourbon, the 100 proof Cooper's Craft might be one of the best values we've ever had on this show, Brad.
Yeah, we always give scores for value at the end of every whiskey review. Cooper's Craft is a 10 out of 10. Their 100 proof it's easily a knock out of the park. And man, it's so cheap. And I don't mean that in a bad way at all. It is affordable. It's delicious. Fitz, you don't have to do much selling here. We're going to do it for you.
Well, and I'm sure you guys know we borrowed the master distiller from Woodford, Chris Morris, to make Cooper's.
Yeah.
And his vision for that barrel reserve was you should have a quality bourbon for when your friends come over that doesn't break the bank.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, don't get me wrong. There are some wonderful, wonderful products out there that are in that 100+ category. But, if Linda from down the street's coming in for a second, she doesn't need a sip of that. Mm-hmm. But make a cocktail with this, you got something that's enjoyable that doesn't break the bank.
So this barrel reserve, the 100 proof that we're trying, it's one of my favorite just everyday drinkers because it absolutely stands up neat. I'm actually sipping it neat right now as we talk. But man, it just makes such a great cocktail. And I don't know about you, Brad and Fitz, but I love making cocktails with, overproof spirits. I just like a little bit more bite. I don't like the dilution sometimes. And so to have 100 proof bourbon, I think really makes just a perfect cocktail almost every time. And so Fitz, you're going to walk us through 3 cocktails here. And, if we can get into the first one if you'd like, but I'd love to just hear your thoughts on this 100 proof bourbon in general. Like, what do you love about the flavor of it and also how it stands up in a cocktail?
So with that barrel reserve, it's just having that 100 proof really allows you to do so much more because you have several schools of thought when it comes to cocktails, but I agree. I want to taste some of that bourbon in there. I'm not adding pineapple juice and Campari to mask the flavor of bourbon. I want to, bring out other characteristics and make a complete package. Mm-hmm. So for me, I think having that 100 proof gives you a little more flexibility because you can work with some of those stronger flavors like you'll see in a Boulevardier, which, you have that Sweet Vermouth and Campari in there. That's a lot of really powerful flavors happening. But when you have that high proof, it's able to stand out and really shine.
Well, Fitz, as you know, we are talking about these cocktails for Valentine's Day. We've established your credentials as to why you are the perfect man to mix a spirit for us. But let's get your love credentials on board as well. Like, what makes you the person to bring on and tell people about how to drink on the most important day of love of the year?
Hold on one sec. Did you just say love credentials?
Yes, I did, Bob.
That's a new requirement for every guest that comes on this show.
I've loved often. I've loved well. I've had my heart broken a couple times, but I'm doing pretty steady these days. I'd say I'm in a pretty fantastic relationship, if I don't say so myself. But I always think you should have a cocktail to celebrate the moment. So Valentine's Day, you should have something that kind of works with the flavors of Valentine's Day. When you think of that, you have your chocolate, you have your rose, which is why I have this delicious A Rose Grows in Kentucky drink for y'all.
Yeah, that is the one that I'm drinking tonight. And I have to say, it is a phenomenal twist on a pretty classic drink.
I do love a New York sour, and you might have got that from looking at the recipe. The saddest I've ever been was in New York, asking someone to make me a New York sour and then not knowing what that was. It just broke my heart.
I feel like that should be a requirement. Just like love credentials should be a requirement. But
exactly.
All right, Fitz, let's build this cocktail out. So like you said, it's a variation on a New York sour. The whiskey sour is just absolutely one of our favorite cocktails. I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And it's just like I make myself a whiskey sour, I'd say once every 2 weeks probably. It just always hits the spot. And one of our favorite variations on that is to put a little red wine float on top, and that's called a New York sour. But Fitz, you've taken a pretty unique twist here, and I think you've hinted at it with the title, A Rose Grows in Kentucky. So what's different about this one than a standard New York sour?
So usually when you're making a New York sour, you want a really strong, fruity wine. I like Malbecs for myself. I just love how the golden color of the whiskey sour with that deep, dark red on top looks. But with this, we are taking out that Malbec and putting in some Rosé. And I do like to use an egg white. I don't know about you guys. Not everyone's comfortable with having an egg white in their cocktail. But I just really love the mouthfeel it gives to your drink. And there's just a bit of lightness that it adds to the cocktail.
Yeah, no, we are 100% with you on that. If you have shied away from adding the egg white into your sours, whether it's because of fear of salmonella or just a nervousness about, how do I add this to the drink? It makes your drink silky smooth and totally worth the effort to put in to do it.
And, now you can get those pasteurized egg whites. So there really isn't that concern of salmonella. So
absolutely,
if you're comfortable with it, you should absolutely play around with it.
All right, so why don't we walk through the recipe itself? For those following along at home, Fitz, you are the mixologist here. I'll let you walk us through the recipe and the build here.
All right, so you're going to need to grab a bottle of Cooper's Craft Barrel Reserve, a little bit of simple syrup, some lemon juice, fresh if you can manage, that egg white, and a little rosé. And we're going to take our egg whites and we are going to add them to a shaker, and we're just going to shake the heck out of these things. When you're shaking these egg whites, you're causing the proteins in them to break down, and that's what's going to give it that nice frothy head. So just give it a really hard shake. About 60 seconds should be good. And if you don't like shaking, I'll tell you a little hack. I use a little latte foamer, like a little milk foamer, and I will just use that, and it will do everything you need without having to sprain your wrist for shaking.
Now,
that is brilliant.
That is super brilliant, actually, and it inspires questions in me now. But I have to ask you. So I'm not vegan. I use the egg white all the time. I know that people like to use aquafaba in place of egg whites. I've never tried it, and to be honest with you, like it just doesn't sound super appealing to me. But I'm sure you've mixed with it before. Can you notice a difference in flavor when you use aquafaba as opposed to an egg white?
So the big thing when using aquafaba is you're going to have to shake it a little bit longer. The nice thing about it is with egg whites, sometimes if the drink warms up a little bit, you can get some of those sulfur smells, which are not great.
Right.
That's rare, but you really don't have that at all with the aquafaba. And I don't know if you've ever had a friend who's brought you like a vegan cheesecake or something and said, "Oh, it's so good, you can't tell it's vegan." It's kind of like that. Okay. I hate saying it like that, but you really, you wouldn't know unless someone went out of their way to be like, "Oh, there's no egg whites in this. We use aquafaba instead."
Yeah. Well, and you know what? I don't think we've ever actually talked about aquafaba on the show, Brad, but they call it aquafaba because calling it chickpea juice sounds doesn't sound quite as appealing. But it's literally like if you open a can of chickpeas, the water that they pack the chickpeas in is aquafaba. You just strain it out and you can use it in place of... Go ahead.
I think you just prevented anyone from ever using aquafaba in a mixed drink now,
Well, see,
Bob.
my thought process was like, oh, if anyone's on the fence about egg white, we'll just tell them that they could use chickpea runoff instead, and then they'll be like, nah, I'm good. I'll use the egg white.
That's a good idea.
Just some bean juice. That's all it is. Really.
Absolutely. So we're going to put the full recipes and exact amounts and pictures, links to pictures of these cocktails in our show notes today. So if you don't catch them the first time we go through, they will all be in the show notes. I have to ask Fitz, before we move on from this one, a lot of rosé that you pick up at the grocery store, especially on the more inexpensive side, is sparkling rosé. I just need to make sure, like, are we using a sparkling here? Or are we using a flat?
Just a flat. Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Save the sparkling for later.
What a
There's
nice
always
little
something
tease
to
there.
toast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey.
All right, let's move into the second cocktail because this is another take on a really classic whiskey cocktail, the Boulevardier. Now, we have not done the Boulevardier on our How to Cocktail episodes yet because we haven't really gotten into the category of Amari. So you may have heard of an Amaro before. There's very, very famous ones out there that you can find in any liquor store like Campari or Aperol. It's a category of very bitter liqueurs that really help round out the flavor of a lot of cocktails. And the Boulevardier is probably the most famous one that utilizes whiskey. And Fitz has just an absolutely delicious take on the Boulevardier for us today for Valentine's Day.
This is pretty fantastic. If you have not looked up the Boulevardier, you're in for a treat because the history is just super rich for this drink. Came out of the Prohibition bar in Paris called Harry's New York Bar. It still stands to this day. So y'all should definitely check it out. But with this, we're going to go ahead and take some of that excess Valentine's Day chocolate and just melt it down. And we're going to rim some nice rocks glasses with that. And as we are rolling these glasses in this nice warm chocolate, we're going to take the glass, and before that chocolate hardens, we're going to roll it in some powdered graham cracker because we are trying to channel s'mores for this salty s'mores Boulevardier. So once we've got that all done, we're going to grab our shaker. We're going to put in our Cooper's Barrel Reserve, 1.5 ounces, and then 1 ounce of Campari and an ounce of Sweet Vermouth. Then half an ounce of Creme de Cacao, 3 dashes of chocolate bitters, and just the tiniest pinch of sea salt. Add a little ice, stir that all up so it's nice and frothy. And then what we're going to do is grab a couple marshmallows, light these bad boys on fire, and we're going to cover that with our rocks glass that has the melted chocolate and the graham cracker on it so it captures the smoke from these burning marshmallows. Once we got that in there, flip the glass around, pour our cocktail in, and enjoy.
And I did, my friend, because this thing is so good. And I have to say, like, you know, we made 2 of them, one for my wife, one for me, and we did one with the garnish and one without. And sometimes I feel like with cocktails like this that are very, very decadent, that people can try to distract you with the garnish, but I really do feel like the garnish adds a different layer to this cocktail, that graham cracker flavor and just a little bit of texture there that you don't get without the garnish. But the drink absolutely stands up on its own too, with or without the garnish.
Well, I was going to say, Bob, I think that really a lot of garnishes, when they're just set on top of a drink, usually that's just for looks. Mm-hmm. But I feel like, you know, tequila shouldn't have the corner on the market when it comes to rimming glasses. Because when you rim things, like, you literally have to drink through it. And I think that's the beauty of this drink, is you get a large part of that s'mores experience through the rim. I mean, Fitz, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but that seems to be the case here.
No, that was absolutely the plan with this. I actually really like, when I make this drink for people for the first time, I only rim one side. Mm-hmm. So they get to experience it both ways. And it is a noticeable difference having that whiskey flow over the chocolate.
Yeah, Fitz. And as I'm sitting here thinking about like all the thought that goes into this, I'm just curious, like, for the average consumer who's out there and is like, yeah, I can make a whiskey sour. I can make a Gold Rush. I can do things that are basic, but I want to branch out and make up my own drink so that, you know, when I entertain friends, I can come up with a name and come up with a drink on my own. Like, what's your process? Like, you are the expert upon experts here at just making up new crap in the whiskey world. So, like, what's your process for thinking of a new drink? Do you start with like a flavor in mind? Do you start with another whiskey drink and think about how you can twist it? Like, where are you at when you're thinking, when you're feeling creative and just saying to yourself, yeah, let's make something new?
So it's funny. The first thing I actually start with is I look at the calendar. I used to, in college, I had a professor who would send out all of those weird national holidays, like, oh, today's National Pizza Day, and you know, so forth. Tomorrow is official apple picking day. And I look at the calendar and try to find some of the holidays that are just kind of weird like that coming up. And if I see one that just sort of sparks something, I try to build a drink around that. So for example, like last fall, for National Cheese Day, I did a cocktail inspired by a cheese board, the last breeze of summer.
Bro, you've got me. I'm in. Let's do it.
It's pretty fantastic. It was, this is also the barrel reserve, orange simple syrup, fig preserves, apple cider, and then where it gets weird, a little dash of balsamic vinegar, and then a bit of sparkling water just to sort of balance it all out.
Fitz, I need you to email me that because that sounds. I'm too. As soon as you said balsamic vinegar, I was like, "Oh, I'm in. This sounds weird and 100%. Perfect."
It's really tasty, and I'll tell you, when I'm making these drinks, I try really hard to make drinks that you could make at home. You know, again, there's balsamic vinegar in it, but that is something you should be able to grab. When I do simple syrups, like I use an orange juice simple syrup in that. That's not too difficult to make. Most folks can take a cup of sugar and a cup of orange juice and simmer that together. So I really want to make these cocktails approachable for anyone.
I don't know, man. That sounds pretty difficult. I don't know if Film and Whiskey Nation can handle that.
I'll send you the info for that. You let me know. Maybe in person I can make one for you.
I appreciate that.
Well, Fitz, before we get into this last cocktail you have for us today, you are a guest on the Film and Whiskey podcast, and we have not. This is Brad. I think this is the first time we've ever sprung this on a guest midstream here.
Completely unaware.
But
you're welcome, Fitz.
Fitz, we'd like to hear if you would reveal to our listeners what's your favorite movie and why.
Oh, no question. Favorite movie of all time is 1993 Steven Spielberg Jurassic Park.
Hey, let's go, man.
That is, so my family and we watch that movie every year for Thanksgiving. It does not get old because they used it as animatronics. A lot of it still holds up to this day. Those raptors are terrifying. Yep. And the score for that movie, I mean, that's kind of up there in Jaws almost. That score is just so fantastic.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you know what? I've been watching the Winter Olympics a little bit, and they keep playing this commercial where, I don't know, it's like skiers are interacting with dinosaurs from Jurassic Park. And it's I don't understand the premise of this commercial, but the dinosaurs look terrible. And I feel like we're 30 years on from the first Jurassic Park, and they are just not getting the memo that the reason the dinosaurs hold up so well is because Spielberg used the CGI so sparingly. And then, you know, like the T-Rex paddock scene is like one of the best horror set pieces I've ever seen. And again, the reason that the CGI looks so good is because they put a layer of rain in front of it. You can hardly see the thing. And because of that, like your mind is filling in the gaps. And I think that like it is such a feat of action filmmaking, and the effects hold up better 30 years later than, you know, Jurassic World did, and that movie's only 10 years old.
The Jurassic World, you know, that was really a love letter, but that original, I mean, how can you beat it?
The thing about Jurassic Park is that it's a perfect movie. Like, I don't really know how else to talk about it. I've told Brad before, it might be my favorite movie of all time. And I've actually been like hanging on to it. We haven't done it on the podcast yet because I want to build to something in our later seasons. But Fitz, you have an open invitation. If you'd like to join us when we do the Jurassic Park episode, like the seat is open, my friend.
I have been debating on doing a John Hammond costume for years now. So if you let me know, I will dye my beard white and find an amber encased mosquito.
You have to say "spared no expense" like 6 times in the episode, though.
Yes. Maybe that's the cocktail name I'll come up with for it.
Oh my gosh!
Yes. I don't want to know what's going into that cocktail.
Spared no expense, or Life Finds a Way. We've got a couple good ones in there.
Oh yeah, for sure.
There's a lot of good cocktail names. I was going to say the only requirement for you to come back on the podcast would be dinosaur themed mixed drinks.
Mm-hmm. So if he does John Hammond, I'm going to do shirtless Goldblum. That's going to be my look. And we'll make a cocktail called the shirtless Goldblum too.
Yeah, and I'll do the young child that just keeps bothering what's his face the whole movie.
All right, we are way off track here talking about shirtless Goldblum and everything else. So, Fitz, let's get back to Valentine's Day.
Yes.
Well, you have one more cocktail for us today, and man, oh man, this thing is fantastic looking. And this is like your after dinner, go all in on the decadence dessert cocktail. Can you reveal to us what it is?
So this is the frozen bourbon s'mores cocktail.
Oh my gosh.
I am a huge dessert fan, and you're absolutely right. This is very, very rich. I would not recommend drinking more than one of these. For this one, you're going to do some more rimming. We're going to get our glass and put some marshmallow fluff on there. Mm-hmm. Some more of those graham crackers. And then for this recipe, we need a couple of marshmallows. Probably 2 is good. 3 tablespoons of marshmallow fluff. Just have some extra graham crackers on the side because you never know when you're going to need them. Half a cup of dark chocolate cocoa powder. 1/4 cup of milk, and you could really use whatever milk you want. I like to use whole milk because if I'm going to be bad, I want to be bad all the way.
There you go.
Feel free to use, oat milk, silk, whatever you want. And then we're going to be using 2 shots of Cooper's Craft Barrel Reserve.
If there's a quote from this episode, it's, if I'm going to be bad, I'm going to be bad all the way.
Discussing whole milk.
That's right. That's right.
That's how you know you've reached peak adulthood. Is like when the worst, most bad thing that you can do is like, I'm drinking whole milk, not 2%.
I'm going to be bad tonight and dip my chocolate chip cookies in whole milk and not 2%.
They never saw it coming.
All right, Fitz, before we let you go today, we're making these cocktails for Valentine's Day. I am going to try to cozy up and watch a good movie after my Valentine's Day meal and cocktail. Is there a Valentine's movie that is going on at your household on Valentine's Day?
So I have to confess, when it comes to ridiculous rom-coms, like the crazier, the better. Mm-hmm. So the one that kind of has a soft spot in my heart is Ghosts of Girlfriends Past with nice. Jennifer Gardner and Matthew McConaughey.
Oh, yeah. That is ridiculous.
Oh, this is not top quality acting, but it's a fun movie. It's just kind of, it's cheeky. It's goofy. I do like the Ebenezer Scrooge kind of story of it. And just some light and easy.
That's a great one. Brad and I actually just finished watching, it's not a romantic comedy, but we just finished watching the movie About Time for an upcoming episode. And that is like, man, it's a romantic movie that I feel like is just totally underseen. And I just love when you return to familiar movies like this. I know a lot of people love revisiting The Notebook every year. Brad and I are always touting When Harry Met Sally. It's like, it's a stone cold classic. And there's a reason.
I was about to bring that up, Bob. When Harry Met Sally, dude, everybody needs to see it.
I don't know if I've ever had a greater success rate in recommending a movie to people than When Harry Met Sally. It's just like, it checks every box. Everyone is always satisfied walking away from that movie. So, we'll start with some Ghosts of Girlfriends Past. If you guys are feeling up to a second movie, you throw on When Harry Met Sally. It's a perfect night for it.
And maybe don't feel scared to switch that order around. I think
go ahead, please.
I was going to say, I think Ghosts of Girlfriends Past will be better after you have these cocktails.
There it is. I like a guy that's honest about his movie recommendations. That's a refreshing take right there.
And honestly, there's no problem with that. So there are some movies that are better with a group of good friends and a few drinks in your belly.
Well, Fitz Bailey, we are just so grateful that you came on the podcast today. We've been trying to get Cooper's back on the podcast. I think we tried it, Brad, in like season 1. We're in season 5 now.
Yeah,
We've just been a while. Trying to find a way to get you guys back on here. And so this was just serendipitous, man. We're so happy to try these Valentine's cocktails. I cannot recommend this Barrel Reserve highly enough. It is like one of the best $30 you can spend in the world of whiskey. And Fitz is just one of the best guys we can talk to in the world of whiskey. I do hope you'll join us again for that Jurassic Park episode, in season to be determined. But Fitz, thank you again for coming on the show today.
Guys, thank you so much for having me. It was an absolute pleasure. And I just really appreciate y'all thinking of us. Thank you.
We'll be back on Monday with another regularly scheduled episode, but until then, I'm Bob Book.
I'm Brad G.
And we'll see you next time.